Hello, and welcome to this presentation. I bring you today this short talk for the Gustaf de Laval Fund for Young Researcher, which I was honored to receive back in 2022. This is the outcome from this little project. My name is Giulio Giagnoni from the Department of Animal and Veterinary Sciences at Aarhus University. I record this in July 24 after putting it all together, and let's dive into the topic. So we're gonna focus on feeding fat to dairy cows for the purpose of reducing enteric methane, and we're gonna look into how fatty acids could be or could not be used as biomarkers for enteric methane emission. More specifically, we're going to look into fatty acids in milk and blood. So, we all know about the goal to reduce greenhouse gases, among these enteric methane, which cows produce in great amount. Why feeding fat is interesting? It's because it can reduce in part this emission through free mechanism, which is because it's not fermentable in the rumen, it's toxic for methanogens and some bacteria in the rumen, and it removes a substrate for methane production through biohydrogenation. And there is many papers and many smart people have already been working on prediction of emission through milk fatty acids. So in this work, we give it a bit of a twist, and I decided to focus on, for sure we had also this blood. There was a lot of focus on this, so on how this prediction from blood fatty acids compare to milk, and specific to the use of fat to reduce enteric methane, also the use of fat source specific models. This was the trial. Mainly and briefly, we had 48 cows in the barn, and these cows were divided in block of 6 cows, and we had the diet, 6 diets to feed to the cows. And the diets, you can see them here. We had a control diet in black, which started at 2% fatty acids, and then we diluted a basal diet by increasing the proportion of rapeseed to increase the fat up to 5.7% fatty acid. And similarly, we did for the 2 diets with some palm kernel fatty acids. We're going to call it PKO. Palm kernel oil is very close. We only had 2 levels, but in total is the 6 diets here. And for this specific project, because we had to analyze, we had some specific samples to analyze, we only used 6 cows. So this is one classic Latin square with all the diet randomly assigned to the different cows. And it was a fully balanced Latin square with 6 periods. So I already gave a mention on the fat sources. We can see more specifically, we have the palm kernel oil. In this case, is pure fatty acids, but regardless, that means that 2 main fatty acids are gonna be added to the diet. And these 2 fatty acids, we see them here, C12 and C14. And we can see that going from the control diet to the low fat and medium fat, we increase these two fatty acids quite a bit. The other fat source was the rapeseed, and here we can see that we added a different type of fatty acids, unsaturated, longer chain fatty acids compared to the palm kernel. So C18-1 omega-9 and C18-2 omega-6, which we can see on the blue diets increasing. We just should note that this 18-1 also increased slightly in the palm kernel diet, as this is also contained in this fat source, even if it's in smaller proportions compared to C12 and C14. Here on the 6 cows, we collected from samples, but first we had to measure the methane. We did that with a GreenFeed, and we of course measure also feed intake or dry matter intake. And on the cows, we collected milk and we collected blood from 2 different sites, one from the tail and one from the mammary vein. And this was to compare the venous blood from the mammary vein to what we assume to be arterial blood from the tail. All the samples, a total of just over 100, were processed and analyzed for fatty acid through extraction of the fat and gas chromatography. So as I said, we took sample from the tail and the mammary vein. And when we compare these 2 sampling sites, we have a rather good agreement. It's not perfect, but there is no indication that we should get better prediction of enteric methane using mammary vein samples. So for the going on from here, we're just gonna use for the blood, we're only gonna use the tail samples. We can see that for some fatty acids, especially the C12 and I will say C14 as well, we can see that it's very clear how these fatty acids increase in the blood of cows when they're fed the palm kernel fatty acids. So that was nice to see. But as I said, from here, we move on only with the tail samples for simplicity. So for the analysis next, we had measured the methane and the dry matter intake. And from this measurement, we can get the methane yield, which is the methane adjusted per feed intake. And this is what it looks like. Sorry for the colors are not the same, but the red is the palm kernel oil and the blue, again, darker blue is the rapeseed. And we see that these increase in different way the methane yield or methane emission, as we refer methane emission in this project for the cows, by increasing the fatty acids. So we only gonna focus on methane yield, which is methane adjusted per kilogram of dry matter intake. And we're gonna have model running individual fatty acids as a single predictor of emission. We just start from the most simple way to see what is the best we can get from that. Then we're gonna move to a multivariate model, a partial least square, by grouping all fatty acids together, whether it's in the milk or in the blood. And finally, we see that if we go back to the same individual fatty acids for simplicity, but we include the information on the fat source, we can improve the models. So what did we get? For the individual fatty acids, we got some significant correlation, not the strongest R2, but we see that both for milk and blood, we have some of the unsaturated fatty acids as best predictor. And yeah, so these were kind of the best in the ranking. And this is a fact. When we move on to the PLS model, we can reach better R-square, better prediction, but not, yeah, around that, 0.6 or 60%. And it's similar between milk and blood. So far we're not finding much better prediction using blood samples. These models are kind of interesting, but difficult to apply in practice, where milk fatty acids are measured or estimated through infrared scanners, which is better at estimating saturated fatty acids. Therefore, the next thing was to include fatty acids that could be used in practice with infrared scan that can be predicted better from this infrared scan rather than the gas chromatography we used. And we added the information about the fat source to the models. And in this case, we focused on C18 and C16 because I think they can be predicted quite well. And the R-square, the gate kind of in a similar ballpark as these fatty acids, at least for C18. But only C18 in blood is actually significant. So this is a bit of a bummer because collecting blood is, yeah, much more complicated. There is not much more, but at least it's more questionable if we should have a routine blood collection on commercial farm, while milk is something that is there, and as well with the infrared scanning. Nevertheless, we wanted to see if having this model, these two models for the milk, we also had the scan on the rest of the cows involved in the experiment, so not on the 6 used in this specific part, but all the other cows, they had infrared scan. So we could use the rest of the cows, that will be 42 cows, as for cross-validation of these two models here. And this is what we did next. So here we have the for C18 on the left and C16 on the right. We have observed versus predicted. And the RM root mean square error of the models are not bad, I think, but they're quite good at predicting the mean of the methane yield, but they do not excel at predicting the variation, especially when we look into the rapeseed. And this is quite important because the conclusion from the production trial, it's that rapeseed is really the most suitable as a palm kernel oil, as we saw, as interesting reduction of methane yield, but it also come to some disadvantage in the milk production. So we really miss a bit of the stretch here on the prediction of methane yield or cows fed rapeseed. And yeah. So take home messages from here that with specific FA, we can get some prediction, some R square below 50%, but we have the issue with the infrared scan. PLS model, they give better prediction, but first we have not cross-validated this model, and also they have the same issue with the applicability with the infrared scan. And we can provide more information to the model. I think it could be useful. And we can improve the prediction for these C18 and C16 fatty acids, both in milk and blood. But that was not significant in the milk. And the cross-validation, it doesn't show promising result for the applicability of this as a tool on farm for checking or testing if a fat source is being implemented and we can expect the reduction in the methane emission happening on farm. I will close it here, and I just want to thank all the people that have been involved in the trial, and especially in this case, the Soren, Annette, and Thomas for taking care of the fatty acids analysis in the lab. Big thank to Ilka and all the Laval for this great opportunity. And yeah, I'll try to leave the comments open. So if there is some question or opinions on this, and of course you can write me on my uni email address here. So thank you for your attention, and yeah, see you.